Anindita Bhadra from India. I'm a behavioral biologist working on stray dogs.
How did this topic get your attention?
Well, I've already done my PhD on animal behavior, and at the end of my PhD, I was thinking of what to now start working on, and I wanted a very Indian model system. So the dogs seem to be the perfect model system because you have dogs everywhere on every street in India. They're easy to work with. You don't have to haggle for permissions with the forest officials, and nobody has really extensively studied dogs in a natural habitat till now. So there's a lot of work on pet dogs, and people work on wolves and try to understand dog evolution. But I felt that the dogs which are surviving as natural populations for centuries on our streets are a very good model system for understanding dog evolution, and also for doing many other things which address basic questions in animal behavior, ecology, and evolution.
What are the biggest challenges?
One of the main problems is that since they're out there and they're completely mingled with people, so we have to do all our work on the streets. So firstly, not every student is comfortable working that way. And while we are doing this, we have a lot of trouble keeping people away and stopping people from disturbing our experiments. There are too many inquisitive people asking questions, some actually telling us, we'll not let you work with the dogs in our neighborhood, and what are you doing, and we'll call the police. So that is one kind of problem that we have all the time. Another problem, which is a very peculiar problem in my case, is because it's dogs, there are some people who love dogs and some people who hate dogs. So it's very difficult to be neutral about dogs. And I often get students who come to me because they actually are very interested in dogs. They have pets in the house and they really are in love with dogs. And I'm very scared of taking up such students for a PhD because they can actually bias the data. Because of their love for dogs, they'll start interacting with the dogs that they're working on. So it's very difficult to tease out, what is really data and what is not a good data. So this is a problem that I face, which is very peculiar, that, dog lovers are not really good people for me. And then, of course, I cannot use people who are scared of dogs or hate dogs. So it's very difficult to find that neutral population who are still interested in doing my kind of work.
What did you find out that surprised you?
One surprising result that we definitely found is that in the literature, there was this notion that dogs don't have stable family groups like wolves. So they, even when they are in groups, it's like random groups. But we are seeing more and more that that's not true. There are family groups, and we actually saw that there is a lot of cooperation between members of the groups, even in raising the pups. So two females would have puppies at the same time, and often they'll help each other in raising each other's pups. And there are also males which hang around with the females and take care of the pups. They play with the pups, they give them food, they protect the pups. So probably these are the fathers. We don't know because we have not done any genetic analysis, because all males don't do it, some males do. But they typically seem to, I like saying this is typically like, the Indian giant family system, where it's not like the wolf system where only one dominant pair mates and then everybody just have to help. But here everybody is mating, all of them are having puppies, but then they're helping out each other just like, large family. So, cousins and nieces and nephews and grandparents, they're all hanging around together in the vicinity, and that's a very interesting and surprising result. Another result, which of course we were not very happy about, is when we did a 5-year-long study to understand growth rates and death rates in the population. And we saw that nearly 81% of the pups born in a year don't reach adulthood. So by 7 months, 81% of the pups are dead. And nearly 60% of the mortality is actually caused by humans. Of course, there are some cases where there are accidents, which is not in our control, but then there are active killings. So that was a result which we didn't expect, and it was not also a very happy result to have.
How is the situation of street dogs worldwide?
It's very interesting because there have been studies to estimate the populations of street dogs across the world. And it seems that nearly 80% of all the dogs present in the world are on streets. So street dogs are still the majority, but of course they are more common in the developing world than in the developed nation because of the way the laws are. Here in our country, so it's okay. On the one hand, there are municipalities trying to cull dog populations, but then you don't have very extensive birth control programs, so there's a problem. You get reports of some dog chasing or biting somebody, and this creates a lot of uproar. But then there is also a lot of dog loving people in the population. They put out food for the dogs regularly. They care for the pups when they're around. So there is a very mixed kind of feeling. And in the Indian culture in particular, it's again very interesting because dogs are considered to be lowly animals. So if you look at Indian literature from far back, say 2,000 years back or 3,000 years back, then you have a literature which talks of dogs on streets, and these dogs are very similar to the dogs of today. They're just like outcasts. But then a good householder is expected to feed these creatures at the end of the day. After the meal, the leftovers are not supposed to be thrown away. They're supposed to be fed to the dogs. So that way, it's a very interesting kind of ecosystem where the dogs are not part of our households, but they are part of the community.
You are also working on dogs' cognition. Could you tell me more about this?
So we are doing these experiments on dog cognition. People working with pet dogs have shown that the pets are very good at following human gestures, and wolves are not. And of course, there's a problem that the pet dogs are brought up by humans, and then there is intrinsic training. So we are doing these experiments with free-ranging dogs to understand what is really innate dog ability and what comes by interactions with humans. And what we saw is that really small puppies who are still suckling from their mothers, are dependent with them on the mothers, not really interacting so much with humans in the streets, which are like 4 to 6 weeks old, they are excellent at following human gestures. So you put a ball and you point towards the ball, the pup will go towards the ball. But when we tested the juvenile condition, which is around 4 to 5 months of age, when the maximum mortality due to humans actually occurs. So they are weaned from their mothers, they are more or less independent, they have started foraging, and they are also quite a bit of nuisance for humans because they are very active. At this stage, the dogs are very, very reluctant to follow human gestures. They do not follow pointing. They will not even respond to the task. But when you don't have the gesture, if you just put the ball, then they'll respond. So they are still eager for the food, but they are very reluctant to rely on humans. So what is surprising is that with puppies, we seem to find an innate ability to understand humans and a tendency to socialize with humans. But with negative experience from humans, they probably learn quickly not to rely on humans. So what we are thinking is what could have happened in the past, in the ancient condition, that with this innate ability to socialize with humans, if puppies come to humans, if they get positive response from people, then they gradually become more and more friendly and probably turn into pets. But if they get a negative response from people, they move away and probably just remain as the stray dogs. This could have been kind of the early stage when domestication was happening. Some dogs became domesticated and some didn't. So this is a very interesting scenario that we have just found.
Did dogs change humans or did humans change dogs?
That is a completely open question that everybody working with dogs is trying to answer. And frankly, I don't think we have an answer to that. I think the most optimum answer would be it's a bit of both. They changed us a bit and we changed them a bit. From the current understanding, dog domestication probably happened around 30,000 years back. And at that time, humans were still hunting animals, most of the animals, and all other domestication events happened after that. But since we don't really understand exactly what happened during domestication of dogs, this is still an open question. We don't really know.
Is there something that you would like people having pets know about dogs?
One thing is that the dogs that are pets have been bred artificially for so many generations. I think they're inherently very different from dogs on the streets. But a feeling that I always had, and with my studies it's becoming more and more relevant, is that dogs are very social creatures. And though when we have pets, we like to think that, they are part of the family and we are their group. It's not really so, right? The interaction you have with another human is not really the same as the interaction you have with your dog. So, of course, the dog can interact with you, but it cannot speak its own language with you. So, I think at least if you want to have a pet, the minimum you can do is give it another dog partner, because they need to socialize and they have a lot of interesting interactions and communications with dogs, and they are so social creatures that probably it's not fair to have a dog as a pet.
What does it mean to be a woman, a scientist, and a mother in India?
It means that my days are 48 hours to begin with. Yeah, so there are, of course, problems, because we have a lot of people with prejudices who think women should be taking care of children and the family. Even in Indian science, there are people who think like that. But I've been brought up in a very liberal-minded family. My grandparents always wanted me to study and become a teacher. My parents let me do what I wanted to do. So I have never been, used to this kind of social system where being a woman is different from being a man. So frankly, I haven't faced too many hurdles till I came to the professional world of actually competing for a job, where I realized that yes, there are problems. Men and women are not always treated at par when you are appearing for a job interview. And for me, because my husband and I are in the same field and at the same institute, it often becomes like, okay, we are treated as a unit and not always as individuals by a few people. But in general, I think we have a majority of people in India who respect women scientists. There is a lot of understanding that, Indian government insists on having daycares in the institutes. So now there is a lot of understanding for the women scientists' needs. You need to have a school and a campus, you need to have daycare so that you can be a mother and have a career at the same time. So personally, I haven't really faced too many issues being a woman, but there is discrimination, there is sexual harassment, and often there are undertones. Nobody will say it on your face, but especially when somebody tells me, oh, you have done this being a woman, I feel very bad. Why being a woman? I mean, why can't you just say you've done this is good? That's good enough. You don't have to say it's even better because you're a woman. I don't think in those terms. When I do my science, I do my science, and whether I'm good or bad, it should be judged on an objective scale, not based on my gender.
What do you like doing when you are not working on research?
Cooking, reading books, listening to music. I do a bit of painting, and my weekends are mostly taken up because my husband and I have a theatre group. So we often have theatre rehearsals. So if I'm not doing research, I'm doing theatre, and my free time mostly is for my kids now.
You are a scientist and an artist. What has science to do with art?
I firmly believe that if you are a good scientist, you need to be creative. And you cannot say that, science is science and the arts are arts. Whenever you have crosstalk between disciplines, you have more creative thinking. So I have always had a creative bent of mine. I used to dance when I was 4 years old, and I haven't stopped. But when I trained for being a scientist, I never felt the need to stop indulging in the arts. And I actually think every student who's doing science should have some other interest outside science, because you cannot just, live within the small sphere of your science. And science is becoming so much specialized day by day. If you are only doing your bit, then you don't know anything about the world. You cannot have lateral thinking. You cannot have ways of applying your knowledge. You need to have an understanding of literature, of social science, of history to be more creative in your science.
Is there a project or an idea right now that you are really passionate about?
Lot of things actually. Other than my research, I'm right now extremely actively involved in the Indian National Young Academy of Science, and this is in a way my baby because I helped founding it. This is not just an academy, it's almost like a new movement which we are trying to start in India, getting people, young people actively involved outside their research in taking science to young children, getting involved in science promotion, science diplomacy, something that Indian scientists rarely do now. So everybody thinks, the older scientists should do this and younger people just should do their research, including the young people themselves. But I'm trying to tell them, no, this is your social responsibility. You are doing your science, fantastic. But what are you doing for society? And this is my way of telling people, come and join us. This is a platform, do something for the society, which is giving you the funding for your research to begin with, right?
What is the role of science in your opinion?
Science helps you to think and reason and analyze. And especially in the Indian context, we keep telling in Indias that one of the things that we would like to do is help people believe in science and practice science as a way of life and not just as a profession. So mostly when students are reading science, they are reading it because they either want to become an engineer or a doctor or a scientist. But beyond that, I think the responsibility of the scientist is to come out of his or her own sphere, step out into the real world and make science easy to understand for the common people, for children, so that people get interested in science. So that, you don't say that I'm doing my science and only I understand my science. You are dumb, you'll not understand. That is not the way we should do our science. We should do science, good science, and then break it down to the language of a child. So I should be able to explain my science to a 5-year-old, to a 10-year-old, to a 50-year-old who have not done science. So that, I think, is a very big responsibility that scientists have, because science is so important. You need to bring in the methods of science to solve the world's problems. You need to bring in the methods of science to address basic questions. In India, we have so many superstitions, and it is very ingrained. People have fear, people have religious beliefs, and people have superstitions. There are these stupid caste divisions. There are still people who practice very rigorous rituals which are completely based in superstitions and completely baseless. But you cannot tell them, you're doing this is dumb. You need them to realize that this is dumb and so I should not do this. And the only way they can realize this is if they start understanding logical reasoning and start asking questions. And this is, I think, the most important job of a scientist, to help people ask questions and find an answer. You don't just give them an answer. You help people to find the answer.
What makes life meaningful?
See, for me, it's very important to be first a good human being. I like to do things for people, whatever I can. So I really cannot say I will go and solve all the problems of the world. But in my capacity, I like to do my bit. And since I like working with children and I'm interested in education, I like teaching, the way I want to solve some of the world's problems is by engaging young children in discourses, in getting them fascinated about nature, getting them fascinated about science, and helping them to ask why. So, especially in our kind of culture, you are always taught to, obey your elders, respect your elders, do what you're told, don't ask questions. So if I can motivate even a small part of the population to say, no, I will ask questions. Every step I need to know why, then I think I have made a good contribution to society in the future. And for me, life is good if I think at the end of the day I have done something positive. And that could be a very small thing, or it could be a big thing. But I need to, for me, my life is meaningful if I'm able to do something which is outside the small sphere of my own family or my set of students. So if I have been able to contribute to society at large in even a small portion, where I have, maybe made a student get interested in science and do science, or got a family not to get their daughter married off when she's 15 and she went out to have an education of her own and a life of her own. That way, I think it's a contribution I make to the society.
Thank you so much, Anindita.
My pleasure.